WordPress 5.5 was released earlier this week, and this is the second major update of this year, bringing with it a lot of improvements, especially to the block editor. While this new editor is hated by many, I actually quite like it. Even more so since the absolutely amazing Generate blocks were released. And you're always better off using the native editor instead of a page builder such as Elementor. At least in my experience, that is. Let's update our photography website, which was built atop of WordPress, and have a look at what's new. The most noticeable thing in WordPress 5.5 will be, at least for us non-programmers, the improvements to the block editor. If we edit one of our pages, we can immediately see the difference. There are now borders around toolbars and buttons, new icons, and highlighting as you click on individual blocks. The interface for adding blocks to our pages and posts is another area that has changed. No longer will you be greeted by a long list of all of your blocks if you click on the Redesign Plus button. Instead, we are presented with our 6 most used blocks and the option to search for other blocks. If we click on Browse All, it will open up a panel on the left hand side. From that panel, we can browse through all our installed blocks. Now, I'm not quite sure if I really like this new design, but luckily for me, I only use a handful of blocks, so I won't be opening that panel all too often. You can also directly install blocks from this panel. Just search for something and WordPress will suggest a suitable block if none is installed. This feature doesn't really feel finished to me, and I honestly can't see myself using it all too often, if at all. For example, there's no way to look at screenshots, and it doesn't even link to the plugin page. In this panel, we also get a look at another new feature: patterns. Now, patterns are predefined page layouts. The selection I'm presented with is a bit bare bones, but as far as I understand it, themes and plugins can add in extra patterns. So we can definitely expect the selection to grow in the coming weeks and months. And I already know that one of my favorite plugins, Generate Blocks, will be bringing in loads of patterns at some point in the future. Another thing that will help all of us who have fallen in love with these Generate blocks is the button to quickly access the parent block. This headline is placed inside of a container which is placed inside of a grid. If I hover over the H icon, you'll see the option to select the parent block pop up right above it. That will definitely save me time when designing pages and posts. And finally, we now get basic inline image editing. Finally, you can now crop, scale, resize and rotate an image without having to open the editor. I can see this function becoming a real time saver, as I've always really hated the WordPress image editor. This function is a godsend. And that is pretty much everything new in the block editor. Let's move on to a few technical but just as important changes, and I'll try to keep it at least slightly interesting. First up is something that will speed up many a website. WordPress finally supports lazy loading of images. What this means is that images will only be downloaded when they are visible on the visitor screen. It's a win-win for everyone. The visitor won't have to download a huge page if he's only interested in a couple of sentences, and as a result, your website will be a lot faster. Your host will also save on bandwidth, which could keep your costs down. Another change which might come in handy is something long overdue. A sitemap is a file that lists all of the content on your website, and this file is used by Google and other search engines, apparently they exist, to help index your website. I don't know why this took so long, but WordPress will now finally build its own sitemap without relying on a third-party plugin. You might know that I use SEO Press, and luckily for me, SEO Press, which builds its own sitemap, will automatically disable this feature. The built-in sitemap will only really come in handy if you are not using a SEO plugin. Keeping Google happy is always a good idea. And finally, we have the option of auto-updating plugins. I don't think I'll be using this feature though. I like reading through the changelogs before I hit install, and I want to be fully in control of things in case an update destroys something. This could be a bit of a risky one if you ask me. But then again, many hacks happen because of outdated plugins, so I can see why WordPress wanted to have this option included. And that's it, I won't go any more technical than that. As always, if you did like this video, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to my channel. It really does make a difference. Right, that's enough from me for one day. I will see you in the next one. Bye.